institutional arrangements. We are cognizant that you can't live in a vacuum. And we're cognizant that the other things that have gone wrong in this country are equally capable of affecting how you operate. I need go no further than the fact that the country has been subject to 4 international advisories from our friends with respect to our public health situation with the sewage. No one wanted to be here at all, but here we are nevertheless. And we in Barbados have always done well in reaching out to each other and understanding that all of us are in this together and that we shall share the burden equally together. And that is all my government has sought to do, recognizing that if we can isolate the opportunities for the tourism governance framework to operate and to soar and to carry us to some targets that I hope to share with you, then all will be well. But what we cannot have is a lopsided country where only one set of people are carrying the burden. On Monday, I indicated that in 4 clear respects, we believe our approach to be different. The first being that we cannot continue to ask one group of people to carry the burden, but equally must we not go to ask the other group to only carry the pain. And hence, the burden will be equally distributed between labor and capital. But traditionally, our first response has been, let go 5,000 people, let go 3,000 people, let go 2,000 people. Can't work, because what we're left with is a government that is not fit for purpose to achieve anything. And anybody who comes into a restructuring exercise with a cutlass instead of a scalpel is not serious about the outcome or is not caring as to whether the entity is fit for purpose at the end of the exercise. The second aspect of it, therefore, is not simply balancing between labor and capital, but the second aspect is understanding that the incidence of taxation and the incidence of user fees has to be broadly shared. There's no easy way to make an omelet. We don't feel it because we don't feel that the eggs got feelings. But there's no easy way to make an omelet. And if we want to transition this country to be the best that it can be, to be able to leverage fully its value proposition, which is what? What is our value proposition? It's our people, and it's our quality of life. It has always been, and on 166 square miles of land, it shall always be. When our people can't have access to buses, or can't get their garbage collected, or start to suffer from the outbreaks of public health, which then start to affect the tourism sector, like chikungunya and Zika. And on that point, we need to be able to work with our public health authorities to ensure that there's a clear message open, because people still believe that young women who are capable still of being mothers ought not to come here because we don't have an all clear on the Zika. But yet, I don't know the last time I've heard anybody in Barbados say that they've had Zika at least a year. So those are the things that we have to close the gap on. But when our people are suffering, or when our people become the victims of despair and hopelessness, or when our people don't have the opportunity for or the prospect for employment in the near future, or leave school and for 5, 6, 7 years do not have jobs, then our tourism product will never be able to extract the best of what this country has to offer. And our simple role here is to be that bridge and to be able to be that balancer, because we believe that we can do better. I am told that in 2017, we welcomed 663,441 visitors. I'm also told that was long stay, and that we had 18,752 cruise visitors. I'm told equally that we only earned $2.1 billion. I want to pause there, and I want that number to sink in. Because in 2007, when last I was part of a government, we were earning $2.3 billion from tourism. A country cannot have gone through a whole decade and be earning less, $200 million less from its primary sector than it was earning a decade ago. Don't mind the increase in arrivals. Let's mind what matters. In that period of time, prices have gone up by almost 50%. If we were just to stay constant with what we were earning from tourism in 2007, we should be earning at least $3.5, $3.6 billion. Therein lies the problem. My government does not pretend to be omnipotent nor omniscient. And I think the events of the last 2.5 weeks should have displayed that to you. When last I met with you as a BHTA, I said that I didn't think that it was impossible for us in 2013 to set a target of 1 million visitors a year and a revenue of $4 billion a year. I believe that when we set targets and we work towards them, we get there, because it's a national effort that we are doing. I deal with it is to talk to those who are on the front line first before we get in a room and start to hypothesize as to what can be done and what can't be done. But the simple mission of our meeting is, how do we make the visitor experience and the returning experience for Barbadians the best experience in the hemisphere, if not the world, at Grantley Adams Airport. We've set up an email as well, as you know, called ideasforbarbados.com, because once again, we don't believe that even though we start meeting with the workers at the airport, that theirs or the social partnership or the government is the sole preserver of knowledge. But what we have to do is to recognize that that experience has to change. Similarly, we have a lot of cloud and fog to get through at the Bridgetown port, but we are equally going to address the issues at the Bridgetown port with the same drive and with the same attitude. Because if we don't get those two ports of entry correct, then much of what we're doing is compromised by the time they get to you in the rest of the visitor experience. I've also asked the Minister of Home Affairs to review the ED cards, because and after consultation with the Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association, because we don't believe that they serve the same purpose that they did before we introduced the advanced passenger information systems in 2007. And forgive me for being a little biased in this matter, because I was the Attorney General that at the time after 2001, when we had a spate of robberies and violent crime in the country, and that there was evidence of people coming in from other islands and committing crime and leaving within 24 to 36 hours, that was when, in the absence of technology, we put the arrangements for people on departure. The circumstances are now different. And therefore, unless there is a compelling reason given by the national security people of the country, there is no reason for us to bottleneck the departure in that way. All of the information that we need now, because of the work that we did with Cricket World Cup, is now captured by the time a person checks in at the airport. Similarly, all of the information is transmitted to the territory to which they are traveling. And that is why you will see in other jurisdictions across the world a more liberal attitude towards how people are processed through the ports of entry. Barbados does not have to wait for other people to do that which is necessary, so long as it meets the precepts that we know we have to defend in the public interest. Simply said, that the Ministry of Home Affairs and the Ministry of Tourism will meet with the Ministry of National Security to see how quickly, therefore, in consultation with the social partnership, but in particular the BHTA, how we can capture the information that we need for all parties, but still make the visitor experience and the returning Barbadian experience a more seamless experience for everyone through our ports of entry. Can we do it together? I'm a little frightened that this room is so deadly silent that I begin to believe that I'm talking to myself. But I believe we can. And if we can set ourselves those simple targets in the same way that the first target that we set ourselves as a government was to take control of our fiscal situation, to take control of the trajectory of our development by recognizing that we had to stop the bleeding. We had to stop the bleeding. What we've done is that we've taken 3 statutory boards off central government, and we've ensured that they have a dedicated form of funding. By spreading the weight, it means that we're not bringing about the kind of recessionary impact on the local economy, because some of the weight is being carried by those who don't live here, but those who visit here. So there is room still for growth. We've also put measures in place that will inevitably see an expansion of spend. Public servants have not gotten money for 8 years. Pensioners have been getting below that which they need to keep a pace with inflation. But what do we ask others to do? That as we do it, let us also carry some weight. Let me therefore come to the one that is perhaps giving many of you a little pause, and that is the issue of the garbage and sewage contribution. And let's put it in context. Those people on the South Coast and Bridgetown have been carrying the burden for the rest of the country. They pay a sewage connection fee. And they've been paying a sewage connection fee at the level of 2/3, I believe, of the water bill. Those on the West Coast have only been lucky that successive governments have taken as long to resolve the sewage arrangements on the West Coast as they have, but the country has been unlucky that we've taken as long to resolve it, because the consequence has been dying reefs and a coastal environment that the Minister of Tourism, who I'm told is a diver, can perhaps better explain to most of us. It's not good. I remember as a child, cobblers and sea eggs. I remember having to get soft candle and get the cobblers out of your foot. I don't know when last I've heard anybody in Barbados have a cobbler in the foot. That is how dread our circumstances are in terms of our coastal environment. My government is committed to us paying forward to the next generation by rebuilding our coral reefs. It's the decent thing to do for our children and grandchildren. But we can't rebuild them if our marine outfall is what it is. Simple. We can't. And therefore, we will be working towards ensuring that we can have, or that we can put Barbados in the best possible situation for the future. Now that means rebuilding our reefs and retrofitting our roofs. And that's why you will hear us talk more, and I'm not going to go in detail today, to the major Roofs to Reefs initiative. And we will work with all of our international partners as well as the Green Climate Fund, we hope, to make Barbados and put Barbados in a better position to adapt to climate change. But if we're going to go there, then we have to deal with the reality of our sewage. And the reality of our sewage and our garbage is, and government has had how many attempts at trying to deal with this? It means that we have to have a simple premise that all of us generate it and all of us will pay for it. I accept that the data from the Barbados Water Authority is not what we are comfortable with as a government. First person to accept that. And what part and parcel of what we have been elected to do is to bring back order to data and to management within the public institutions of this country. We are not mad people, and we do not intend to become mad. But what we will do is that we will assess the situation. We have already, when I announced it on Monday, indicated that there is a 50% rebate for pensioners who live alone, who will be adjudged by the Welfare Department or the National Assistance Board. Similarly, those families that are below the poverty line will also have a 50% rebate, and we will find institutional arrangements to support them even in the context of that 50% rebate. Just as we have with the Land Tax Relief Board, there will be a pellet relief mechanism to deal with those situations that are injurious. So if a person has a water leak, nobody is going to be charged on the basis of that bill on the basis of a water leak. We will look for a comparable amount as to where the water usage normally is, and they will be charged on that. A government must never be an instrument of oppression to its people. Similarly, we will await the first 3 months of bills from the tourism sector and the industrial sector, those who use a large amount of water, to be able to set, if necessary, an appropriate cap, as we have done with land tax in this country. Barbados's business can be orderly, can be managed in good order, but we have to give the government the chance to collect the data, particularly when the institutions which we have inherited are in the state in which they are with respect to the data which is available to the public managers whom we have. So I ask this sector to bear with us. Any situation that is injurious, the appellate relief mechanism can deal with, and I want that to happen without political interference, because that is when our governance is best. But at the same time, I say, give us the opportunity to see where the trajectory goes before we make any changes, because not a single bill has left the Barbados Water Authority as yet on behalf of the Sanitation Services Authority. And in those circumstances, let us get on with the task. Now, why are we doing all of this? Social partnership will tell you. Senator Moore is here. The outgoing president is here. On the very first morning of my government, on the 28th of May, the very first meeting was with the Social Partnership of Barbados. And the very first conversation was to identify what unites us. Do we, as one, stand to do that which is necessary to defend the value of the Barbados dollar and to defend the Barbados quality of life? And I think that I may have to ask all of us to remind ourselves, but to remind others, what is the mission at hand? Our country inherited, or our government inherited, a level of reserves at the last possible minute before lumpy foreign debt payments against the background of rising international oil prices and within days of the beginning of the hurricane season. I don't need to repeat that equation for you. The risk of any one of those factors destabilizing this country was simply too high. And the confidence that we are getting from the international community, from both investors and indeed from institutions, has been heartwarming since taking the decisions that we have to take, because they feel that Barbados is yet again now a serious country with a singular purpose. The message has gone forth that our social partnership has performed exceptionally in conjunction with the government to reflect a singular purpose to do that which is necessary to save the value of this country's dollar and to save our quality of life. Will it hurt as we try to save it? It must. It must. I want to lose weight and it's hurting me all like now. And I keep telling you that. Want to. Anything like this will have some pain. But will it kill us? It will not. It really, really, really will not. Now, what is the value proposition that we need to keep working on? We need to work on literally the well-being and the attitudes of our people to want to achieve more and to want to be the best that they can be. We need to work on the investments that are critical for growth. And as I promised you from yesterday, that has been my focus. Yesterday afternoon, I had a 4-hour meeting with the Town Planning Department, and we are putting ourselves in a position to be able to have public consultations starting from the 27th of June, going back to the 29th of July, to be able to reframe the policy that is necessary to renew a piece of legislation that was passed in the year that I was born, 1965. Can't govern development in Barbados in the third decade of the 21st century, which is where we will soon be at. Similarly, the Barbados Tourism Investment Inc. will be required to play a critical role, and the new governance arrangements with the board will soon be in place for that. And I'm happy that the person who will lead it will be somebody well known to you in terms of its chairman, who will also be able to help make sure that the institutional arrangements and the knowledge that is necessary for that seamless work between BHTA and the genuine tourism sector can take place. And subject to Cabinet's approval, I'm happy that Ms. Myers has agreed to chair the Barbados Tourism Investment Inc. Subject to Cabinet approval again, I'm happy that Mr. Kashka Haynes has agreed to be Deputy Chairman as a former small hotel president in the tourism sector. I share these things with you because it is important that you understand that my government is serious about turning this country and turning this sector around. And we recognize that we must give ourselves the best opportunity to do so by utilizing the best talent that, somebody wants to send a message, the best talent that this country has to offer. So believe you me, we can do it. We shall do it. Minister Simmons is a senior minister in my government. That is why he has been given this portfolio. I have seen him in the last 2.5 weeks work with a zeal that pleases my heart. And I trust that once that continues, believe you me, the heavy lifting will soon become light lifting, because many hands make light work. I also want to say to the workers within the tourism sector that our vision and our view is never simply at capital. We are conscious that it is the workers who ultimately deliver that value proposition that gives Barbados the highest return visitor factor of countries in the hemisphere, I'm told. Without our workers being on the front line, making it possible for those who invest their capital to get a return on it, we wouldn't be able to do what we are doing. And I'd like us to find a way of ensuring that the productivity frameworks that we keep speaking about for decades are finally put in place so that the workers have even more impetus and more zeal to make that Barbados visitor experience something that I'm frightened to say that is just beyond our imagination. Because that perhaps has not been where our imagination has taken us. But I think it may be better for me to use the Star Trek cliche to go where no man has gone before. It's not beyond us. And if my tone is reflective today, it is because I need you to be reflective. Today is not a rally. Today is about getting you on board, getting you all aboard the mission of turning Barbados into the best visitor experience in the world. I didn't say in the hemisphere, I said in the world. Because I believe that all of us in this room and all of us outside have the capacity to do it. But we have to have the same mission, we have to have the motivation, and we have to make sure that just as I've insisted that everybody share in the burden, everybody must be capable of sharing in the bounty. That is the Barbados way. That is who we are. That is what we stand for. And with your cooperation and with your getting on board, that is what will be written as to how we got to $4 billion in 2023 and how we get to 1 million visitors. Thank you and God bless.
Ladies and gentlemen, join me once again in thanking the Prime Minister for that remarkable presentation. And Prime Minister is available to answer any questions which you may have.
I can take a few questions. I'm told that when I woke up this morning, I didn't know I would have to travel, but I go to Washington this afternoon for some meetings to make sure that we can continue apace in a manner in which I'm pleased with. So you will forgive me if I don't stay with you. And I want to thank the President for allowing me to speak therefore out of turn first, because I think he would normally have spoken before me. So thank you. Any questions? It seems good then. 10, 9. Rudy, I think, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Good afternoon, Madam Prime Minister.
Good afternoon.
I'm in awe, first of all, to hear
you.
you speak in person. And I supremely congratulate you and your government.
Thank you.
The question I have is, I did have questions on the sewage and garbage levy, but that is in your capable hands and you are reviewing it. And I like how this government is actually operating similar to the private sector, which is not just taking things very slowly. So my question for you is, the last administration had the Tourism Development Amendment Act, and the concession process was supposed to have been favorable to the industry that generates the most business to the island. It does not work. So I just wanted to know if that is on your agenda and what's the
Definitely.
time frame for it. And I won't address the other red herring in the tourism market, especially the luxury market.
Okay, what's the other red herring?
Sandals.
Oh, okay. I think, let me say that I gave the social partnership the commitment that I will have conversations, but I want to carry you back to a speech that I made at the Chamber of Commerce when I indicated in 2014 that I think Mr. Stewart might have to become a Barbadian. I didn't know how much I need him to become a Barbadian, but we do need him to become a Barbadian. And rest assured, look, Barbados is a country governed by the rule of law. But by the same token, Barbados is a country that is fueled by consultation and conversation. And I have every confidence that a conversation that sets out what the issues are, what we face, and what we have to do to go forward, we can get people to do the right thing in this country. And let me say, therefore, that I look forward to meeting with Mr. Stewart on behalf of the government and people of Barbados. And at the very least, let's start where we need to start, with the room levy. So I look forward to that conversation, and we move forward together. As it relates to the concessions, I said in opposition, I say still no, and I believe the minister has heard me, and in fact, yesterday at lunch we spoke about it, that those concessions effectively created three classes of hoteliers in this country. Those like Sandals that get everything without consultation and hold it in bond, etc. Those who have to come to the Ministry of Tourism, and I believe every 2 weeks the Ministry of Tourism is taken up with having to push paper, which is nonsense.
Correct.
And then those who don't even get anywhere near the Ministry of Tourism or anywhere near the concessions because their cash flow has been such that they've had difficulties in being able to meet basic statutory requirements. And as a result, therefore, they're precluded from being a beneficiary of any of those concessions. This cannot be the way. This cannot be the Barbados way to which I just referred. And therefore, one of the early things that the Ministry of Tourism will be looking at is how to bring about greater equity as well as fairness and transparency in the management of those concessions under the Tourism Development Act.
Thank you.
Prime Minister, I have a couple
Yes,
of
sir.
questions. You touched in your budget, mini budget, on the shared accommodation sector. Can't hear me?
I think Mr. Hampton is a little too tall.
You touched in your budget speech on the shared economy sector, and I think most of us would acknowledge that that has been a big part of the leakage that you spoke of in the targets to get to the revenues that we should be achieving, when in actual fact we're getting less per occupied room night than we were several years ago. So, and you touched on the fact that the information was available to identify that and to register, regulate, tax that sector. And I think most of us here would agree that that's important. So I'd just like to hear a little more on that. And secondly, new business facilitation. I think there's a kind of I've always felt there's been a bit of a gap between what Invest Barbados does for the offshore sector and what the ministry does for tourism, and the need to encourage FDI in a big way for this country in the next few years.
Well, as I said to you, that's why I've taken the task of populating the Barbados Tourism Investment Inc. in the manner in which I intend to, okay, because that has to be at the front line of helping us drive investment into tourism and not just simply be the arm that does construction in tourism for the government of Barbados. That's the first thing. Secondly, in relation to the shared accommodation sector, clearly there has to be a legislative framework. One of the beautiful things is that technology now exists for us to be able to better track what people do in terms of how they spend and how they earn. But secondly, the Ministry of Tourism has now to meet with all of the entities who represent the shared accommodation sector. And like other countries in the world, Barbados' sovereign right to tax will be respected. Okay? We have some gaps too, and let's not be fooling ourselves. Barbados needs an appropriate legislative framework to deal with fractional ownership. We keep talking about it, we don't have it. So we have a decade of lost development in tourism in every respect, and the minister is very clear on what his responsibility is. The Barbados Tourism Marketing Inc. and the Barbados Tourism Product Authority do critical jobs, but all we're saying is that we think that we have to be far more entrepreneurial in how we do it, look for opportunities for co-marketing, look for opportunities that will allow the private sector, as the majority shareholder, the government as the minority shareholder with a golden share. Our duty is to ensure equity and to have general economic returns. We feel that the BTMI, though, has also the capacity to earn in co-marketing, and that is enabled by you as a private sector working with them too. So I've set the mission, allow the people to now go and plan and to come back to us and let us tweak and see how we can do it. I'm hoping that the institutional arrangements for the BTMI and the BTPA can be there by the 1st of October, as I said, and in a way that meets the concerns of everyone. Similarly, I would expect that the legislative framework for the shared accommodation sector would be before Parliament, if not by then, soon thereafter. But I have to allow the ministry to go and have the conversations with them. And the third part is that we need to rely on the technology, because we know what the entities are today, but the entities keep evolving with every week and every month. So we need a solution that is sustainable in terms of being able to track where those bookings are coming. And we feel that we have a technological solution that helps us to deal with that and online participants generally in commerce.
Thank you.
Okay? Any more? I don't want to therefore detain you any further from your lunch. Please forgive me if I leave the room, but thank you very much for being the first audience that I have formally to address as Prime Minister of Barbados. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister, once again for your inspiring words. Thank you for the confidence you have reposed in the Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association, and we want to give you the assurance that we remain committed to working with you and your government in ensuring that we help to put Barbados back on a sustainable development growth path. Ladies and gentlemen, our Prime Minister, the Honorable Mia Amor Mottley. Please we'll wait until Prime Minister has left, and please be seated.